What if a simple hand gesture from a shy black waitress to a seemingly ordinary elderly customer revealed fluent sign language skills nobody knew she possessed? When Jasmine quietly signed a greeting to the unresponsive woman at table 7, she had no idea she was communicating with the billionaire's deaf mother, or that her small act of compassion would cost her job that very afternoon. But as security cameras captured every graceful movement of her hands, the powerful man watching from across the diner saw something that would change both their lives forever. What if the quietest person in the room held the most extraordinary gift, one that would bridge worlds and change lives forever? Jasmine Thompson adjusted the collar of her crisp red uniform as morning lights streamed through the windows of the Golden Spoon, an upscale diner nestled between gleaming skyscrapers in downtown Chicago where business people paid $20 for artisanal avocado toast without blinking. Her slender fingers moved with practiced precision, refilling coffee cups and delivering perfectly plated breakfasts while her mind calculated tuition payments, now 3 months overdue, and the electricity bill threatening disconnection at the small apartment she shared with her teenage siblings, Zoe and Marcus. The weight of their future pressed against her shoulders with each step across the polished floor, the acceptance letter to Lakeside Nursing College growing dog-eared in her purse from the countless times she had unfolded it, a dream repeatedly deferred but never abandoned. Mr. Davis, the restaurant manager, watched her from his corner office, his pale eyes narrowing whenever she spent more than 30 seconds with a customer, his voice carrying deliberately across the busy dining room when he reminded her about proper procedures, though her service ratings consistently topped the employee chart pinned to the break room wall. When the newest server dropped an entire tray of mimosas, Mr. Davis had sighed and called it a learning experience. But last week, when Jasmine had forgotten a side of bacon, he had docked her pay and assigned her the worst section for 3 consecutive shifts. The other employees noticed the disparity in treatment, but turned away, protective of their own precarious positions, leaving Jasmine to navigate the subtle current of injustice that flowed beneath the restaurant's polished surface. During brief breaks, she studied medical terminology from flashcards hidden in her apron pocket, mouthing anatomical terms while restocking napkins, stealing moments of education between demands for more sparkling water and gluten-free options. Despite everything, Jasmine carried herself with a quiet dignity that some customers noticed, leaving generous tips with small notes of encouragement that she saved in a jar labelled Future, alongside the photograph of her mother at her nursing school graduation 20 years earlier, before illness had taken her from them, leaving behind 3 children and a legacy of compassionate care that Jasmine was determined to honour. The morning rush swelled around her like a tide, carrying voices and demands that she met with efficient grace, her own voice rarely rising above the necessary volume to confirm an order or offer a recommendation, her smile genuine but reserved, revealing nothing of the fire of determination that burned within her, or the unique skill she had developed caring for her deaf cousin throughout childhood, a talent hidden beneath her quiet exterior like a seed waiting for the right moment to bloom. Friends, before we go further, may I ask a small favour? Please subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us keep bringing you these stories, and reaching 1,000 subscribers soon is so important for us to continue. We also love hearing from you. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how our little storytelling circle is spreading across the world. And if you enjoyed the beginning, give this video a like. The Tuesday morning lull shattered as the brass bell above the entrance chimed, announcing the arrival of an elderly woman wrapped in a beige cardigan, despite the summer heat outside. Eleanor Whitfield moved with cautious dignity through the restaurant, her silver hair caught in a simple twist at the nape of her neck, her handbag and shoes well worn but clearly expensive in the way items become when chosen for quality rather than fashion. Jasmine watched as 3 servers noticed the woman attempting to catch their attention, then deliberately pivoted away after spotting the discreet hearing aids partially hidden by silver curls, their expressions shifting from professional smiles to thinly veiled annoyance. The woman settled at table 7, directly in Jasmine's section, her slender fingers nervously arranging and rearranging the silverware as she glanced hopefully at each passing staff member, her isolation palpable in the bustling diner where conversation flowed like coffee. Through the kitchen pass, Jasmine could hear Tyler muttering about getting stuck with her last time, how it took forever just to get a simple order, while Melissa mimicked exaggerated hand gestures that bore no resemblance to actual sign language, drawing snickers from the line cooks. A flush of heat rose in Jasmine's cheeks as she recognized the particular loneliness of being invisible in a crowded room, a feeling she knew intimately from countless moments when her voice had been dismissed or overlooked. Mr. Davis emerged from his office, coffee mug in hand, his voice deliberately loud enough to carry across the restaurant as he complained about difficult customers taking up valuable table space during the peak profit hours. The woman at table 7, hunched slightly smaller in her seat, her eyes fixed on the menu she held upside down, her awareness of being the subject of discussion evident in the tight line of her shoulders and the way she seemed to be trying to occupy less space. The other customers continued eating, some shifting uncomfortably at the manager's tactless comments while others remained oblivious, protected by the privilege from recognizing the small cruelties playing out beside their Belgian waffles and fair trade coffee. Jasmine felt the familiar weight of choice pressing against her chest, the path of least resistance beckoning her to ignore the woman just like everyone else, to protect her fragile employment status by not drawing attention to herself. The memory of her mother surfaced unbidden, her hands moving gracefully as she taught 8-year-old Jasmine how to communicate with cousin Layla, her voice gentle but firm as she explained that everyone deserves to be acknowledged, to be seen. With a deep breath that carried the scent of cinnamon and possibility, Jasmine straightened her red uniform, tucked her order pad into her pocket, and moved toward table 7 with purpose, her hands already lifting to form words unspoken at the golden spoon for many years. Good intentions rarely announce their power to change destiny. They simply arrive in small moments of human connection that alter everything that follows. Jasmine approached table 7 with a warm smile, her hands rising into the shared space between herself and the elderly woman in a fluid greeting that spoke without sound. "Good morning, my name is Jasmine. I will be taking care of you today. Would you like coffee to start?" Her fingers expressed with graceful precision, the formal American Sign Language syntax flowing naturally after years of conversing with her cousin. The transformation on Eleanor Whitfield's face unfolded like dawn breaking over a forgotten landscape, her eyes widening with recognition and relief, tension melting from her shoulders as she straightened in her chair, suddenly occupying her rightful space in the world again. "Thank you, yes please, coffee with cream," she signed back, her movements carrying the elegant formality of someone who learned sign language in a different era. Across the restaurant, seated in a corner booth surrounded by 3 executive types in identical charcoal suits, Maxwell Whitfield froze mid-sentence, his coffee cup suspended halfway to his lips as his attention locked onto the interaction unfolding at table 7. The tech billionaire, whose face regularly appeared on business magazine covers, whose latest software innovation had revolutionized medical diagnostics, whose net worth exceeded the GDP of small nations, sat completely still while his associates continued their practice pitches about market penetration and profit margins. His dark eyes narrowed with laser focus on the young waitress, tracking every movement of her hands with an intensity that transformed his typically composed expression into one of naked shock. Jasmine continued signing with Eleanor, unaware of the powerful attention now fixed upon her, suggesting the lemon ricotta pancakes with fresh berries and explaining that the kitchen could modify any dish to accommodate dietary preferences. Eleanor signed back with increasing animation, her face illuminated by the simple joy of being understood, asking questions about the menu that Jasmine answered with patient fluidity. The other servers watched with poorly concealed amazement as the difficult customer transformed into an engaged, smiling woman through Jasmine's unexpected skill, while Mr. Davis emerged from his office with a darkening expression that suggested extraordinary service might somehow be a violation of unspoken protocol. The morning sunlight streaming through tall windows caught the subtle movements of Eleanor's silver rings as her hands shaped grateful words, glinting off the elegant watch on Maxwell's wrist as he abruptly silenced his business associates with a raised finger and illuminated the simple name tag on Jasmine's red uniform as she performed this small act of dignity restoration, unaware that security cameras captured every graceful movement of her hands, unaware that the quiet moment of human connection was setting in motion events that would soon lift her from anonymous struggle into unwanted spotlight, challenging everything she believed about her past and future. Acts of kindness rarely go unpunished in a world that mistakes compassion for weakness and efficiency for worth. Jasmine had just finished taking Eleanor's order when the heavy presence of Mr. Davis materialized beside her, his cologne announcing his arrival before his shadow fell across the Mabel. His fingers closed around her elbow with uncomfortable pressure as he pulled her slightly backward, his smile remaining fixed for the customer, while his voice dropped to a controlled hiss meant for Jasmine alone. The kitchen chaos provided background noise, pots clanging, and line cooks shouting orders, while the immediate space around table 7 fell into tense silence. "I need to speak with you immediately about appropriate time management," he said, his pale eyes flickering dismissively toward Eleanor, who had become very still. Her hands folded in her lap as she watched the interaction with the resigned expression of someone accustomed to being the cause of others' inconvenience. Jasmine felt heat rising from her collar as other customers glanced curiously in their direction, the weight of public scrutiny adding to her humiliation. "3 tables in your section have been seated for over 5 minutes without water or greeting, while you waste time with elaborate hand gestures," Mr. Davis continued, his voice carrying just enough to reach nearby tables, where businessmen shifted uncomfortably and avoided eye contact. "If you can't handle your section properly, you'll have to reduce your hours to what you can manage, which might be considerably less than your current schedule." The implication hung in the air between them, her precarious financial situation leveraged against her like a weapon, nursing school tuition and her siblings' needs suddenly threatened by this one act of basic human decency. Across the restaurant, Maxwell Whitfield had abandoned any pretense of attending to his business meeting, his associates exchanging confused glances as their normally laser-focused CEO completely disregarded their presentation to watch the confrontation unfolding across the dining room. His expression remained carefully neutral, but his body had tensed like a predator assessing a situation before deciding whether to strike, his manicured fingers tapping a thoughtful rhythm against the polished table surface. Eleanor reached for her purse, clearly intending to leave rather than cause more trouble for the kind waitress, but Jasmine gently touched her arm while maintaining eye contact with her manager. "I apologize for the delay, Mr. Davis. I was ensuring our guest could place her order accurately since she is deaf," Jasmine explained, her voice steady despite the trembling that had started in her knees, threatening her professional posture. The bills waiting at home flashed through her mind, her siblings' faces, the nursing school deadline looming like a sentence about to be passed. Her simple act of communication had now cascaded into potential catastrophe, the fragile scaffolding of her future threatening to collapse under the weight of her manager's displeasure, all while the mysterious man in the corner watched with an intensity that seemed to hold significance she couldn't yet understand. Moments of desperation rarely choose dignified settings to reveal themselves, instead finding us in places that mirror our inner desolation. The narrow alley behind the Golden Spoon offered Jasmine 15 precious minutes of solitude during her break, the brick wall cool against her back as she slid down to sit on an overturned milk crate, her legs suddenly too weak to support both her body and her collapsing hopes. The deferment notice from Lakeside Nursing College trembled in her hands, the formal language politely explaining that her payment extension could not be granted a third time, while beneath it her mother's medical bills continued their relentless accumulation, the hospice care costs from 3 years ago still haunting her present with monthly payment, demands that stripped away any chance of financial recovery. Salt tears tracked silently down her cheeks, falling onto the red uniform she maintained, with such care, each drop a surrender to reality she normally refused to acknowledge. The alley smelled of coffee grounds and yesterday of dreams left to spoil alongside vegetable peelings and stale bread, the downtown Chicago noises muffled by the tall buildings that blocked both sunlight and hope from reaching this forgotten space. So absorbed was she in her private pain that Jasmine failed to notice the approaching footsteps until a shadow fell across her lap, causing her to hurriedly wipe her face and begin to rise, apology already forming on her lips for extending her break. The man standing before her seemed bizarrely out of place in the grimy alley, his bespoke suit worth more than 6 months of her rent, his Italian leather shoes somehow remaining spotless on the stained concrete, his presence carrying the unmistakable assurance of someone who had never worried about a bill in his life. "Maxwell Whitfield," he said simply, extending a hand toward her with a directness that suggested he rarely needed to introduce himself. "I am Eleanor's son, and I noticed something extraordinary happen in the restaurant today." The wall behind Jasmine suddenly seemed to be the only thing keeping her upright as she processed his identity, her mind racing to understand why this powerful man had followed her into an alley, her fight-or-flight response temporarily overridden by pure confusion. My mother has not signed with anyone in public for over 7 years, he continued, his deep voice carrying neither judgment nor excessive emotion, just the calm certainty of someone accustomed to making factual statements that altered realities. Since her stroke affected her speech, she has largely withdrawn from social interactions outside our immediate family, carrying a notepad but rarely finding patience in strangers. Yet within 30 seconds of meeting you, I watched her come alive again, expressing herself with a confidence I had forgotten existed within her. The cramped alley with its dumpsters and delivery crates suddenly seemed to expand around Jasmine, as though the universe itself were making room for possibilities that had not existed 15 minutes earlier. Fortune offers its cruelest twists precisely when hope begins to bloom, testing not just our resilience but the very core of our dignity. Jasmine had barely returned to her section, mind still processing her surreal alley conversation with Maxwell Whitfield, when Mr. Davis materialized beside her with the triumphant expression of a predator who had finally cornered its prey. The restaurant had filled to capacity during the lunch rush, every table occupied with business professionals and tourists seeking refuge from the unexpected summer storm that now lashed against the windows with percussive intensity. "I saw you on the security feed, fraternizing with a customer behind my restaurant," Mr. Davis announced loudly, his voice carrying over the ambient dining noise and causing nearby conversations to falter and die. "As of this moment, you are terminated for violation of Company Policy Section 3.2. No employee shall engage in unauthorized meetings with customers outside designated service areas." His pale eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he extended his hand expectantly, waiting for her name tag and apron. The unjustness of the accusation momentarily robbed Jasmine of speech, her throat constricting around protests that would make no difference to a decision clearly made before evidence or explanation could be offered. The restaurant had fallen completely silent, fork suspended mid-air, every eye drawn to the public execution of her employment. Her humiliation served as an unordered side dish to their overpriced lunches. With hands that refused to tremble despite the earthquake happening within her chest, Jasmine unpinned her name tag and untied the strings of her red apron, carefully folding the fabric that represented both her livelihood and the prison of her limited opportunities. Maxwell Whitfield rose from his table with the fluid authority of someone unaccustomed to witnessing injustice without correcting it, his voice cutting through the silence with the precision of an expensive blade. "There has clearly been a misunderstanding," he began, addressing Mr. Davis with the confident expectation of someone whose words typically rearranged reality to his preference. "I approached your employee, not the reverse." Jasmine looked directly at Maxwell, a small shake of her head conveying what her pride would not allow her to say aloud, that she neither needed nor wanted rescue from a stranger, no matter how wealthy or well-intentioned. With her apron and name tag placed precisely on the hostess stand, Jasmine walked toward the exit with her head held high, each step measured and deliberate despite the financial abyss opening beneath her feet. The sudden absence of restaurant noise as she pushed open the heavy glass door gave way to the violent symphony of rain hammering against pavement, the water immediately plastering her white blouse to her skin and washing away the tears that had begun to fall despite her determination to deny Mr. Davis the satisfaction of her visible pain. The universe often delivers its most life-altering propositions in our most vulnerable moments, testing not just our need but our ability to accept grace without surrendering dignity. Jasmine sat cross-legged on the threadbare couch that dominated the main room of the apartment she shared with her siblings, surrounded by nursing textbooks with highlighted passages and dog-eared corners, each representing hours stolen from sleep in pursuit of a dream now seemingly further from reach. Family photographs covered the faded wallpaper like a patchwork quilt of memories, her mother in nursing scrubs holding infant Marcus, 10-year-old Jasmine helping 7-year-old Zoe blow out birthday candles, visual reminders of why surrender had never been an option, despite the mounting impossibilities. The cramped space somehow contained their entire world, the kitchen barely large enough for a mini refrigerator and 2-burner stove, the bathroom shared through carefully orchestrated morning schedules, the bedroom partitioned with hanging sheets to create illusions of privacy for 3 growing humans. Marcus looked up from his homework spread across their repurposed dinner table, his 16-year-old face carrying concern too mature for his years as Jasmine explained her sudden unemployment, while 17-year-old Zoe abandoned her college application essay to join the impromptu family meeting about their suddenly more precarious finances. The unexpected trill of her phone cut through their strategic planning. An unknown number with a downtown area code causing Jasmine to hesitate before answering. The voice on the other end belonged to Maxwell Whitfield, somehow both exactly as commanding and unexpectedly warmer than their brief alley interaction had suggested. "My mother has been without a proper personal assistant for 3 months now," he explained without preamble or social cushioning. "She requires someone with sign language fluency, discretion, basic medical knowledge, and a compassionate nature. I would like to offer you the position, starting immediately, with compensation beginning at $75,000 annually, plus health benefits and educational assistance." The figures he mentioned so casually represented a transformation so complete that Jasmine temporarily lost her ability to form words, her free hand gripping the back of the couch as the room seemed to tilt beneath her. Zoe, recognizing the shift in her sister's expression, moved closer with questioning eyes that Jasmine answered, with mouthed numbers that caused her sister to press both hands to her mouth in shocked delight. Marcus abandoned all pretense of homework, crossing to stand before Jasmine with earnest intensity. His whispered take it punctuated by enthusiastic nodding from Zoe. Yet beneath the undeniable relief of financial salvation lurked uncomfortable questions about timing and motivation, about charity dressed as opportunity, about maintaining independence while accepting assistance. This man knew nothing about her qualifications beyond a chance encounter and a brief conversation, his rescue too perfectly timed, too conveniently aligned with her most desperate moment. The smell of instant ramen cooking on their hot plate filled the apartment, mingling with the scent of rain still clinging to her hair. As Jasmine weighed the cost of pride against practical needs, her siblings' hopeful expressions silently casting votes for pragmatism over principle. What if the path forward sometimes required stepping into a world where nothing felt familiar except the face in an old photograph that inexplicably mirrored your own? The Whitfield estate sprawled across 3 acres of manicured gardens in Lake Forest, the mansion itself a limestone testament to old money, refined by new technology, with soaring ceilings that made Jasmine feel smaller than she already did in this alien landscape of privilege. Her first week as Eleanor Whitfield's personal assistant had introduced her to a reality she had previously glimpsed only through television screens and magazine pages, where bathroom fixtures were gold-plated, where kitchen appliances cost more than her entire apartment, where original artwork hung casually on walls as though priceless paintings were merely decorative rather than representing generational wealth. Eleanor had welcomed Jasmine with genuine warmth that transcended their employer-employee relationship, their hands conversing with increasing familiarity and humour as Jasmine organised medications, scheduled appointments, and translated during Eleanor's physical therapy sessions with practitioners who looked through rather than at their wealthy patient. On her 5th day, while organising a cluttered desk drawer at Eleanor's direction, Jasmine discovered a silver-framed photograph nestled beneath embroidered handkerchiefs, the image showing a much younger Eleanor standing beside a young black woman in her 20s, both with hands raised mid-sign, both laughing with the unself-conscious joy of true connection. "Maria taught me to sign when nobody else would bother," Eleanor signed, her fingers moving with the tender reverence reserved for cherished memories. "She said everyone deserves a voice, even when that voice uses hands instead of sound." The young woman in the photograph shared Jasmine's high cheekbones and almond-shaped eyes, her hands positioned in a sign dialect with regional variations that Jasmine recognized from her own mother's teachings, coincidences that sent a shiver of something unnamed down her spine. From the doorway, Maxwell observed their interaction with an expression that combined satisfaction and concern in equal measure, his calculating gaze tracking the growing comfort between his mother and Jasmine, with the intensity of someone monitoring a chemical reaction with both anticipated and unpredictable elements. The contrast between Jasmine's previous life and present circumstances created a disorienting sense of displacement, like waking up inside someone else's dream, her modest wardrobe and simple hairstyle standing in stark relief against the backdrop of crystal chandeliers and marble floors, her practical nature finding little common ground with a household that employed 7 staff members to maintain daily operations. Yet when her hands moved in conversation with Eleanor, that strange displacement vanished, replaced by an inexplicable sense of belonging that made no logical sense yet felt undeniably right, as though her presence in this mansion was somehow preordained by forces neither she nor the Whitfields fully understood or acknowledged. Peace built on unspoken truths inevitably fractures when the past refuses to remain buried beneath the foundations of new beginnings. 2 weeks into her position at the Whitfield estate, as Jasmine arranged afternoon tea in the sunlit conservatory where Eleanor enjoyed reading, the distant chime of the front doorbell preceded raised voices that disrupted the tranquil atmosphere. The butler appeared with unusual discomfort visible in his typically impassive expression, informing Jasmine that a visitor was insisting on speaking with her, despite being told to make a proper appointment. The floor beneath her feet seemed to dissolve as she entered the marble foyer to find Mr. Davis standing beside an ornate console table, his polyester suit and slicked hair appearing particularly shabby against the backdrop of old-world luxury, his face flushed with the particular satisfaction of someone who believes they are about to witness deserved comeuppance. "I have come to inform Mr. Whitfield that he has employed a thief," he announced loudly enough for his voice to echo against the vaulted ceiling, producing a folder he claimed contained evidence that Jasmine had been skimming from register to tellers at the Golden Spoon for months. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas, contaminating the sanctuary Jasmine had cautiously begun to trust, bringing the familiar sensation of being guilty until proven innocent simply because of who she was rather than what she had done. Before she could formulate a defense, Maxwell materialized from his home office with thunderous expression, his voice carrying the precise chill of the controlled fury as he dismissed not only the accusations but Mr. Davis himself, instructing security to escort him from the property with a warning about slander that carried unmistakable legal threat. Yet even as relief should have flooded through her, Jasmine noticed something troubling in the calculated efficiency with which Maxwell handled the situation, as though he had anticipated this confrontation rather than been surprised by it. Later that afternoon, Maxwell requested her presence in his office, a technology-filled command center with multiple screens displaying various business operations. One monitor paused on security footage from the Golden Spoon, capturing the exact moment when Jasmine had first signed to Eleanor. The camera angle focused with suspicious precision on her hands rather than the overall interaction. "My mother mentioned you learned sign language from your mother," Maxwell commented with careful casualness that failed to mask his intense interest, the screen behind him revealing that her employment had perhaps never been as serendipitous as it appeared. "Why did you really hire me?" Jasmine finally asked, her heart pounding with the sudden certainty that she had walked willingly into something far more complex than a fortunate job opportunity, the luxurious surroundings suddenly feeling less like sanctuary and more like an elaborate stage set for a play whose script everyone but her had read in advance. Truth arrives in unexpected moments, tearing through carefully constructed realities with the devastating precision of lightning splitting an ancient oak. The Whitfield Library stood as a testament to generational continuity, leather-bound first editions lining mahogany shelves that reached toward coffered ceilings. Oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors keeping silent watch over family secrets spanning centuries. The air itself heavy with the particular stillness that knowledge creates when preserved, but seldom disturbed. Eleanor had requested Jasmine's assistance sorting through old correspondence, but when they entered the imposing room, Eleanor locked the heavy doors behind them with unexpected solemnity before guiding Jasmine to a hidden panel behind an astronomical globe, revealing a concealed safe from which she withdrew a worn leather album. The morning sunlight filtering through leaded glass windows illuminated dust motes that danced between them as Eleanor placed the album on a reading table and opened it with reverent care to reveal dozens of photographs documenting a younger Eleanor with the same black woman from the desk photograph, their relationship captured across seasons and years, their hands always in motion, always signing, or always connected through language that transcended conventional communication. "Maria Thompson was much more than my interpreter," Eleanor signed, her fingers trembling slightly with emotion long contained. "She was my dearest friend, the only person who saw me rather than my family name or my disability. Her hands gave me voice when the world had silenced me. 30 years ago, Maria disappeared without explanation, leaving behind her position, her apartment, and a newborn daughter she had just named Jasmine. The world around Jasmine seemed to tilt on its axis, hound receding as though she were underwater, her focus narrowing to the photographs that documented a truth her mother, the woman who raised her, had never shared. With unsteady fingers she traced the image of Maria's face, finding her own eyes, her own cheekbones, her own hands reflected back through decades of absence. The most remarkable thing, Eleanor continued, her signs gaining intensity with each revelation, is that Maria developed unique sign variations for certain concepts, regional adaptations and personal flourishes that were distinctly hers, unlike standard ASL. The moment I saw you sign to me at the restaurant, I recognized those same patterns, those identical flourishes that you could only have learned from her, a genetic memory passed through, hands that remember what the mind never knew. The library with its history and permanence suddenly felt insufficient to contain the seismic revelation reshaping Jasmine's understanding of herself, the weight of inheritance pressing against her chest with each breath. Questions multiplying faster than they could be formed into coherent thoughts. The photographs blurred as tears filled her eyes. Decades of believing herself completely known, suddenly revealed as partial truth, her identity both confirmed and thrown into question simultaneously by the undeniable evidence that the hands through which she expressed herself had always belonged to a legacy she never knew existed. Truth often waits patiently beneath the surface of our lives and currents of destiny flowing silently until the moment when past and present collide with transformative force. The evening shadows lengthened across the Whitfield mansion drawing room as Maxwell joined Eleanor and Jasmine, the glow from antique lamps casting warm amber light that softened the sharp angles of wealth and privilege, creating an intimate island amid vast opulence. Maxwell lowered himself into a leather chair positioned to form a triangle with the two women, his typical business demeanor replaced by something more vulnerable, more human than Jasmine had witnessed in the 3 weeks of her employment. "My mother has spent 29 years searching for Maria Thompson and any family she might have had," he began, his voice carrying the weight of a mission spanning decades. "I continued that search after taking over the family business, employing private investigators across 4 states, following fragmented trails that always seemed to vanish just as they grew promising." Eleanor picked up the narrative with graceful hands, explaining how Maria had intervened during a robbery attempt at a charity event 3 decades earlier, physically placing herself between danger and Eleanor when security personnel had fled. "She taught me true communication when doctors and specialists had given up," Eleanor signed, "treating me as a person when society saw only a broken, wealthy woman." Maria refused payment beyond her interpreter salary, insisting that human connection should not be commodified, that true friendship transcended financial transaction. Maxwell leaned forward, his gaze holding Jasmine's with unprecedented earnestness as he explained that 2 months after Maria disappeared, leaving no forwarding address or explanation, they discovered she had given birth to a daughter, but all hospital records led to dead ends, adoption agencies denied involvement, and the trail went completely cold. When security cameras at the Golden Spoon captured Jasmine's hands forming signs in Mariah's distinctive patterns, facial recognition software confirmed the striking physical resemblance, prompting Maxwell to create the personal assistant position as means of connection rather than immediately revealing their suspicions. The amber light caught tears tracking silently down Eleanor's cheeks as she signed that finding Jasmine felt like recovering a piece of her heart long missing, while Maxwell's expression revealed the uncomfortable recognition that their approach, however well-intentioned, had begun with manipulation rather than honesty. The revelation settled around Jasmine like a cloak both warming and smothering, offering answers to questions she had never thought to ask while simultaneously unraveling the narrative of her life into loose threads of uncertainty. She could walk away from this family and their wealth, return to her siblings and the struggle she understood, protect herself from further emotional complexity, from feeling like an experiment or charity case. Or she could step fully into this unexpected inheritance of connection, embracing a history that had always lived in her hands without her knowledge, accepting that her path forward might include these people who had searched for her without knowing her name. Fragments of truth often assemble like puzzle pieces, revealing patterns of injustice that connect present struggles to historical wounds with devastating clarity. Late into the evening following Maxwell's confession, Jasmine found herself unable to sleep, drawn instead to the soft glow emanating from beneath his office door, where she discovered him reviewing investigation files still open on his computer monitors. Her hesitant knock prompted a distracted invitation to enter the sleek, technology-filled space where digital displays covered entire walls, creating a command center that contrasted sharply with the mansion's otherwise traditional aesthetic. With newfound boldness born from partial truths already revealed, Jasmine asked to see everything they had discovered about Maria, a request Maxwell honored by unlocking a digital archive organized with meticulous precision. News clippings from 30 years earlier detailed a worker exploitation scandal at Golden Chain Diners, the corporate predecessor to the Golden Spoon, where immigrant staff and single mothers had been systematically underpaid and threatened with deportation or child services intervention if they complained about unsafe conditions. Security footage captured a younger version of Mr. Davis, then a junior manager being groomed for executive positions, physically intimidating pregnant staff members, one of whom Jasmine recognized with a shock that stole her breath. The unmistakable face of Maria captured in grainy black and white as she confronted him while visibly pregnant. Financial records showed hush money payments to multiple employees, alongside documentation of Whitfield Enterprises as majority shareholder in the restaurant chain during the period when these abuses occurred, implicating Maxwell's father in the corporate cover-up that had silenced victims and protected perpetrators. The atmospheric pressure in the room seemed to change as Jasmine connected the devastating dots, understanding blooming with nauseating clarity that her mother had fled not from responsibility but from systematic persecution, that her own current struggles stemmed directly from injustice buried beneath corporate paperwork and legal settlements. Mr. Davis had recognized Maria and Jasmine the moment she began signing. His vendetta against her, motivated not by her job performance but by his fear that his buried past might resurface through her existence. Maxwell watched her realization with complicated grief etched across his features. His voice uncharacteristically humble as he explained that discovering his father's complicity had fueled his determination to make amends, to find Maria or her family, to correct a generational wrong through whatever means necessary. The high-definition monitors surrounding them reflected Jasmine's shocked expression, multiplied across every glass surface as she absorbed the revelation that the man who had fired her, who had threatened her livelihood, who had followed her to the Whitfield estate with false accusations, was the very person responsible for separating her from her birth mother and setting in motion 30 years of unnecessary struggle, a villain masquerading as an authority figure while perpetuating harm across decades. Justice arrives in moments of public reckoning when truth finally outshines the tarnish of long-perpetuated lies. The annual Whitfield Foundation Charity Gala transformed the crystal ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel into a glittering showcase of Chicago's elite, with champagne flowing as freely as donation pledges among guests whose combined net worth could solve the very problems their philanthropy merely addressed. Jasmine stood uncomfortably at the periphery, in a borrowed gown that felt like costume rather than clothing. Her presence requested by Eleanor, who had insisted this night marked an important step in the Foundation's new direction, focusing on workplace justice and immigrant rights. The familiar voice cutting through ambient conversation struck Jasmine like an electrical current, her spine stiffening as she turned to see Davis moving confidently through the crowd toward the Whitfield table, his expression carrying the particular smugness of someone who believes they have finally secured the upper hand. He had somehow finagled an invitation through a business associate, using the opportunity to loudly inform nearby board members that Maxwell had employed someone with questionable background and ethics, suggesting the Whitfields had been manipulated by a calculated con artist with fabricated qualifications. As surrounding conversations faltered and attention shifted toward this unexpected disruption, Eleanor rose from her seat with regal dignity, her silver hair catching crystal chandelier light as she moved to the center of the ballroom where the string quartet had fallen silent. Her hands began to move with passionate precision, signing her story with such emotional intensity that even those who understood no sign language could not look away from the elderly woman whose face transformed with each gesture. Maxwell stepped beside his mother, his voice carrying across the now completely silent ballroom as he translated her signs into spoken words that revealed the historical injustice, the corporate cover-up, Mariah's courage, and Mr. Davis' direct role in threatening a pregnant woman who had stood against exploitation. Jasmine watched as comprehension dawned across the faces of Foundation board members, as wealthy patrons who had dined at the Golden Spoon for years realized their comfortable brunches had been built upon buried injustice, as the powerful crowd shifted their collective gaze from Eleanor to Mr. Davis with newfound awareness. When Eleanor finished her story by introducing Jasmine as Maria's daughter, as living proof of both historical wrongs and potential redemption, the weight of 300 expectant gazes fell upon Jasmine like spotlights. Moving forward with grace she had not known she possessed, Jasmine addressed the crowd with voice and hand simultaneously, her signs flowing parallel to her spoken words, telling the story of her mother's unexplained fears, their financial struggles despite constant work, The systematic barriers that had kept nursing education just beyond her reach for years, and finally the strange twist of fate that had returned her to the very person who'd precipitated her family's hardship. The first person to stand was the Attorney General of Illinois, her applause initiating a wave that swept across the ballroom until 500 hands created thunderous approval while Mr. Davis shrunk toward the exit. His power evaporated in the glare of exposed truth. The most profound transformations often manifest not in what we possess, but in what we create for others from the ashes of our own struggles. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the Maria Thompson Community Center, bathing the converted warehouse space in natural light that reflected off polished wooden floors where 3 different sign language classes operated simultaneously, their participants ranging from toddlers to seniors, from medical professionals to family members of deaf individuals. Jasmine moved through the vibrant space with purposeful energy, her nursing scrubs replaced by a professional blazer over jeans, her clipboard documenting the center's expanding programs while she paused to offer encouragement to nervous beginners struggling with basic signs. 1 year had transformed not only her circumstances but her entire conception of what was possible. The former waitress, now executive director of a foundation initiative that combined healthcare accessibility, language education, and employment advocacy under a single roof in a neighborhood where such resources had been non-existent. The nursing degree that once seemed perpetually out of reach now hung framed in her office, alongside photographs of her siblings thriving in their own educational pursuits, Zoe in her first year of medical school, and Marcus preparing for college engineering programs with scholarships secured through Whitfield Foundation connections. Eleanor visited 3 times weekly to teach advanced signing classes, her health visibly improved by the sense of purpose that radiated from her as she connected with students, her bond with Jasmine deepening into something that transcended their unusual history to become genuine family connection, built on mutual respect and shared mission. The center hummed with productive activity in every corner, from the technology lab where immigrants received digital literacy training, to the legal clinic where workplace rights advocates helped community members navigate employment challenges, each element addressing systemic barriers Jasmine had once faced alone. When Maxwell appeared at the main entrance, his typical business attire replaced by casual Friday wear that signaled his gradual softening into someone more balanced, Jasmine welcomed him with the comfortable familiarity that had slowly replaced their initial awkwardness. He carried a file folder containing information about 17 families they had located across 6 states, all impacted by the same corporate misconduct that had separated Jasmine from her birth mother, all now eligible for the restitution program the Whitfield Foundation had established, with minimal publicity but maximum impact. Looking around at the center that bore her birth mother's name, at the lives being reshaped through education and opportunity, at the legacy of justice emerging from historical wrongs, Jasmine recognized that the most meaningful inheritance from Maria wasn't genetic features or signing patterns, but the courage to stand for others when systems failed them, to transform personal pain into community healing, to build bridges where walls had once seemed permanent fixtures of an unchangeable landscape. What appears as merely a moment between strangers can contain within it the seeds of revolution, redemption, and rebirth that transform not just individual lives but entire communities across generations. The grand auditorium of Lakeside College of Nursing overflowed with attendees for the inaugural Maria Thompson Memorial Scholarship dedication. The space filled beyond capacity with current students, healthcare professionals, community members, and media representatives eager to witness the launch of a program that would fully fund nursing education for 20 underprivileged students annually, with preference given to those fluent in sign language or raised by single parents. Jasmine stood at the podium bathed in spotlight that caught the subtle gleam of her mother's gold locket around her neck, her posture embodying the confidence of someone who had discovered her purpose through fire and emerged stronger for the journey. As her hands rose to begin signing simultaneously with her spoken words, Eleanor and Maxwell stepped forward to flank her, their hands moving in perfect synchronization with hers, 3 voices speaking as one through both sound and motion, creating a visual representation of bridges built between worlds once separated by privilege, circumstance, and misunderstanding. 2 years ago, I was a waitress struggling to make ends meet, carrying dreams that seemed impossible to reach, serving coffee to people who looked through rather than at me, Jasmine told the rapt audience, her voice carrying the quiet authority of lived experience rather than theoretical understanding. A single act of kindness toward an elderly deaf woman I had never met set in motion events that uncovered buried injustice, reunited severed family connections, and created opportunities that have now extended beyond me to touch hundreds of lives. The journey from that diner to this podium was neither simple nor painless, requiring confrontation with difficult truths, accountability for historical wrongs, and the courage to imagine healing where bitterness might have been justified. Tears glistened in the eyes of many attendees as Jasmine explained how recognizing the inherent dignity of every person, especially those society renders invisible or voiceless, creates ripples of transformation that extend far beyond the initial point of contact. As the formal ceremony concluded, Jasmine moved among the reception attendees not as a director or executive, but as a teacher, gathering an impromptu circle of curious individuals who wanted to learn basic signs, her patience and encouragement drawing in people from every background present. Doctors in expensive suits practiced alongside cafeteria workers still in uniform. Nursing students signed with board members, and children mimicked the movements of corporate executives, all barriers of status temporarily dissolved through the simple act of learning to communicate in a new way. Eleanor watched from nearby, her eyes brimming with the particular joy of witnessing a legacy blooming beyond anything she could have imagined when she first met a young interpreter 3 decades earlier, while Maxwell observed with the satisfaction of someone who had discovered that true wealth lay not in accumulation but in restoration, not in power wielded but in justice served.